England. England is a country that is part of the UK. A romantic name for England is Loegria, related to the Welsh word for England, Lloegr, and popularized by its use in Arthurian legend. Albion is also applied to England in a more poetic form, although its original meaning concerns the island of Britain as a whole. In the west it borders with Wales and in the north with Scotland. The Irish Sea lies to the northwest and the Atlantic Sea to the southwest is the Celtic Sea. The area now known as England was first settled by modern humans in the Upper Palaeolithic, but takes its name from the Angles, a Germanic tribe who settled in the 5th and 6th centuries. The Kingdom of England, which included Wales after 1535, ceased to be a sovereign state in its own right on May 1, 1707, when the provisions agreed in the Treaty of Union the previous year were enacted by the Acts of Union, resulting in a political union with the kingdom bled from Scotland to the establishment of the Kingdom of Great Britain. The name England derives from the Old English name Engleland, meaning land of anglers. The Angles were one of the Germanic tribes that settled in Britain during the early Middle Ages. The Angles came from the Anglia Peninsula in the Bay of Kiel, today's state of Schleswig-Holstein, of the Baltic Sea. The earliest recorded use of the term as Engleland is found in the late 9th century Old English translation of Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People. The earliest attested mention of the Angles is found in the 1st century work of Tacitus, Germania, which uses the Latin word Anglii. The etymology of the tribal name itself is disputed among scholars. It has been suggested that it derives from the shape of the peninsula of Angels, an angular shape. How and why a term derived from the name of a less significant tribe like the Saxons came to be used for the country as a whole is not known, but it appears that this is related to the naming of the Germanic people in Britain Anglo-Saxons or English Saxons, to distinguish them from the continental Saxons, Eeltsieks, of Old Saxony in Germany. In Scottish Gaelic, the Saxon tribe gave their name to the word for England, Saeson. Similarly, the Welsh name for the English language is Saesneg. The earliest known evidence of human presence in the area now known as England is from Homo antecessor, and dates to around 780,000 years ago. The oldest proto-human bones discovered in England date from 500,000 years ago. Modern humans are known to have inhabited the area during the Upper Paleolithic, however, permanent settlements have only been established in the last 6,000 years. After the last ice age, only large mammals such as mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinos remained. Humans resettled the area around 11,000 years ago when the ice sheets began to recede. Genetic studies indicate that they originate from the northern part of the Iberian Peninsula. Sea levels were lower than today and Britain was connected to Ireland and Eurasia by a land bridge. It was separated from Ireland by rising seas 10,000 years ago and from Eurasia 2 millennia later. The beaker culture came around 2500 BC. And introduced clay drinking and eating vessels and vessels that served as reduction vessels for smelting copper ores. Significant Neolithic monuments such as Stonehenge and Avebury were built during this period. By coheating tin and copper, which were plentiful in the area, the beaker culture made bronze and later iron from iron ores. The development of iron smelting made it possible to build better plows. The further development. The author of a study of Roman Britain suggested that the Roman invaders killed between 100,000 and 250,000 people between AD 43 and 84 out of a population of perhaps 2 million. A Greco-Roman culture prevailed during this period, with the introduction of Roman law, Roman architecture, aqueducts, sewers, many agricultural objects, and silk. These groups then began to settle in increasing numbers during the 5th and 6th centuries, initially in the east of the country. Their advance was contained for a few decades following the British victory at the Battle of Mountbatten, but then picked up steam again, overrunning the fertile lowlands of Britain and reducing the area under Breton control to a series of separate enclaves in the more rugged country to the west to the late 6th century. Contemporary texts describing this period are extremely rare, which is why it is called the Dark Ages. Details of Anglo-Saxon settlement in Britain are therefore a subject of considerable disagreement. The emerging consensus is that it was widespread in the south and east, but less pronounced in the north and west, where Celtic languages continued to be spoken even in areas under Anglo-Saxon control. Roman-dominated Christianity had generally been superseded by Anglo-Saxon paganism in the conquered territories, but was reintroduced from 597 by missionaries from Rome led by Augustine. Disputes between the Roman and Celtic-dominated forms of Christianity ended in a victory for the Roman tradition at the Council of Whitby, 664, which was said to have been about tonsures, cleric haircuts, and the date of Easter, but more importantly the differences in Roman and Celtic forms of authority, theology, and praxis. Many ancient stone monuments were built in the prehistoric period. Some of the best known include Stonehenge, Devil's Arrows, Rudston Monolith, and Castlereagh. With the introduction of ancient Roman architecture came the development of basilicas, baths, amphitheaters, triumphal arches, villas, Roman temples, Roman roads, Roman forts, stockades, and aqueducts. It was the Romans who founded the first cities such as London, Bath, York, Chester, and St. Albans. Perhaps the most well-known example is Hadrian's Wall, which stretches across northern England. Another well-preserved example are the Roman baths in Bath, Somerset. The profane buildings of early medieval architecture were simple constructions, mainly made of wood and thatch for roofs. The ecclesiastical architecture ranged from a synthesis of Hiberno-Saxon monasticism to the early Christian basilica and architecture characterized by pilaster strips, empty arcades, baluster shafts, and triangular openings. After the Norman conquest in 1066, various castles were built. Some of the best known include the Tower of London, Warwick Castle, Durham Castle, and Windsor Castle. During the Plantagenet era, English Gothic architecture flourished, with medieval cathedrals such as Canterbury Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, and York Minster being prime examples. Castles, palaces, mansions, universities, and parish churches were also built on the Norman basis. The medieval architecture was completed by the 16th century Tudor style. The Four Centres Arch, now known as the Tudor Arch, was a defining feature, as were wattle and daub houses in the interior. After the Renaissance, an architectural form emerged that was reminiscent of classical antiquity and Christianity, with the English Baroque style of architect Christopher Wren being particularly appreciated. The Romans invaded Britain in AD 43 during the reign of Emperor Claudius and went on to conquer much of Britain. The area was incorporated as the province of Britannia into the Roman Empire. The most prominent native tribes who resisted were the Catavilani, led by Caratacus. Later, a rebellion led by Boudica, queen of the Iceni, ended in Boudica's suicide following her defeat at the Battle of Watling Street. Many scientific and technological advances have their origins in England, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. Humor, tradition, and good manners are qualities commonly associated with the English. The Secretary of State for Culture, Media, and Sport is the minister responsible for cultural life in England. England's culture is defined by the cultural norms of England and the English people. Because of England's influential position within the United Kingdom, it can sometimes be difficult to distinguish English culture from the culture. England has also played an important role in cinema, literature, music, art, technology, engineering, democracy, shipbuilding, aeronautics, motor vehicles, philosophy, science, mathematics, and sport. Thank you for the valuable time you have taken to watch this video.